Commissioner Alex Fernandez, how are you?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Your namesake must follow you everywhere you go.
You know, people ask me, number one, if I play baseball, and number two, si canto rancheras. And I do neither. You don't want me singing,
Yeah.
and you don't want me throwing the ball.
So have you ever been in a setting where like they're like Alex and then like four people look?
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's funny. I went to there's this men's circle that a buddy of mine invited me to, and half of the room were Alex's.
And then the other half were Fernandez's.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's funny because my name's Nadir and I've met one other Nadir in my entire life, and I was like, I felt like this immediate connection. When you meet other Alex, I feel like other Alexes know, but other Alex Fernandez's, is there like this like unspoken bond or?
You know what's funny? I only know one other Alex Fernandez.
Yeah.
And so, Alex's is like, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Another Alex Fernandez is like, there's only one person here with a crown.
Yeah.
That's me.
But there have been other Alex Fernandez's in politics that ran. They didn't win.
Really?
Yeah, I believe when I was with Vance Lupus in 2018, his primary opponent was also an Alex Fernandez. He was a lawyer.
Way.
Yeah, but that was in Westchester.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I think of people who have influenced me in public service, I think of Alex Fernandez.
That's so great that you name dropped him. Okay,
Right?
Why is that?
Well, number one, because as a kid growing up,
He was the mayor.
he was the mayor of Miami-Dade County, and he was an Alex. And so whenever like anything was spoken of about Alex Pinellas, like I always
see yourself in
listened.
him.
Yes. And like he was such an advocate for such great things, including like public transportation.
Yes.
And he was also very focused on the growth of this metropolitan area, the lungs of the county being the airport and the seaport. And so like whenever you heard Alex Pinellas' name, my ears just perked up because I wanted to know what this incredible leader was doing.
Right.
And so now I have the honor that not only am I a Miami Beach City Commissioner, but he's a part-time resident of Miami Beach. So now I have the honor of having him as my constituent.
It's like full circle.
Yeah.
Did you always know you wanted to be in public office, or
No.
did this kind of like fall into your lap? Like how did that go? Like what's the origin story?
Well, I've always wanted to serve the community. So like when I was young, I was very involved with Camilla's House, raising money for homeless causes. I knew I liked public service and I loved working in the offices of elected officials. So I worked with people like Rebeca Sosa, who had a tremendous...
She was a legend.
Oh, she is a legend still. And so she had a tremendous influence in my life. I never thought I would be running for public office. I ran once in 2009.
Took a little break.
Was that?
That you took a little break.
Yeah. I ran once in 2009. I missed the runoff by 21 votes, and I was very young at the time also. But then I became best friends with the person who won that race, Michael Gongora, who held the seat on the Miami Beach City Commission that I'm serving in now,
right?
Ironically. And so again, that's another full circle moment because we ran against each other. He ended up winning, and when he ended up being term limited, I ended up occupying the seat.
But that's good that you can have that decorum, because I feel like a lot of people think that like just because we're opponents doesn't mean that we can't like each other. Like people think that because I'm running against you, like I have to hate you.
That's the worst thing about today's political climate, the tension, the hatred towards differing opinions, when in reality, the fact that we have a differing opinion is a launching point for a conversation and the opportunity to see, okay, well, where do we find the common ground? And that's one of the most exciting things that I find with public service. I was meeting today with someone, and he was asking me, what's the most difficult thing? Because he's thinking about running for office. And I said, well, the most difficult thing is the criticism that people throw at you.
How do you deal with it?
And for me, it's just, I ignore the fact that the person is saying something negative about me. I just know that they have a difference of opinion. And I try to understand, where does this difference of opinion originate from?
Right.
Why does this person think differently on this issue? Is it because they live in an area that's going to be affected by something? Is it because they've personally experienced something? I try to get myself in their shoes, and then I try to see, okay, where do we find the middle ground?
Right.
And that is, finding that middle ground is like, it just excites me.
And that's what you like. That's what the public service is about.
Yeah, in my opinion, because if you think about it, I live in a city that has almost 90,000 residents, and so you're
And it's very diverse.
very diverse opinions. You have diversity in wealth as well. You have really rich people and really poor people. You have people of many different cultural backgrounds. You have residents and businesses with conflicting interests. And so you are always in every issue going to find not two different opinions. You're going to have 3, 4, 5 different opinions, and you need to find, okay, what's that middle ground that you navigate to find the best outcome for the city.
I would say, especially as somebody who, what we do is we knock doors, we help candidates win the elections. And when I talk to residents, I always think like, yes, there's differences of opinions, but we have so much more that brings us together than what separates us. So when you're trying to find that middle ground, how do you connect with people? Do you think you start a relationship first, or do you come in with facts? Like, you know what I'm saying? When you are in that situation that you have a disagreement, what's your way of how you bridge that gap?
Listening. That's the most important thing. People want to be heard, and you can't bridge that gap if you're only focused on yourself, on your opinion. What makes your opinion right? No, I need to listen to what the person with a differing opinion, I know what my opinion is.
Right.
Forget
your
about
position.
that. I'm here to represent the people. I'm not here to represent myself. Do I have core values? I have very strong core values on public safety, on cleanliness, on efficiency, and demanding excellence from our government. But what ultimately matters is not my opinion on something. It's ultimately the opinion of the residents who elected me to represent them.
Yeah.
And so when there's a difference in opinion with them, I need to hear them out. I need to know where their opinion is rooted from, and I need to hear everyone else's opinion. And I think you're so right, because I think there's so much more that brings us together. And ultimately, when you listen to everyone, you'll see, okay, you see where that common denominator is.
And that's where we can get behind.
Yeah. Like I tried to put things almost like on a proverbial Venn diagram, because you ultimately find
where the middle ground is.
Yeah, you'll always find it.
And of course, you can have disagreements with constituents, but I imagine that you've had disagreements with your other commissioners. So how do you deal when you have opposing views with your fellow commissioners? Like, yeah, you agree on something, but you don't agree on everything.
But you see, the thing is, disagreements or maybe differences of ideas, of ways of doing things, but we're all elected by the same people on the city commission. Like, we all serve the entire city. We don't have districts, so we all serve the entire city.
Right, you're all at large.
So when my colleague is presenting something I might not completely agree on, but my colleague is representing a constituency that might want this. So what I always try to do is, rather than kill a colleague's idea, I always try my colleagues to be successful as well, because they're representing a group of people that want something to advance. And so I always try to say, okay, how do I make something better? Rather than voting no against something, how can I get something to a place that makes sense so that we all end up winning out of it?
Good. And I'll tell you this, I think you have a special task, because out of all the cities, the city of Miami Beach is like super uniquely positioned, not just locally, but internationally. Some other cities might not have that kind of influence. And you're in like one of like the most, like I said, diverse districts ever. So how do you mitigate that local community, but yet that like international tourism hub?
It's what makes Miami Beach so beautiful. Our residents love that we are a tourist destination, and we want to stay a tourist destination. And so it's easy, because not only do our residents love that diversity, it helps fund our economy in Miami Beach. The reality is that many of the services that our residents enjoy are funded with the taxes that tourists pay in our city. About half of our $1 billion budget comes from tourist revenues.
Yeah.
And so we coexist very well. The thing is making sure that you have defined areas for residents to enjoy, where they know they have their quality of life that's protected, where they're not going to have parties till 5 a.m. Next to where they live, and then have the other areas of the city where tourism can thrive and where nightlife can really be enjoyed, and where you can have that explosion of energy that's brought into the city by the international tourism. And I think we've balanced that very well. You see flourishing art scenes like the Faena district, and you see the excitement that people have when they come to enjoy our Art Deco district and the largest collection of Art Deco buildings, and the energy that's around Washington Avenue and Ocean Drive.
It's very unique.
It is very unique. And then you see the more quaint areas of our city like West Avenue and like North Beach, where residents can enjoy positive quality of life and beautiful parks, and families can go and have a good time and know that they can still enjoy living.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, the best of both worlds. And it does exist. It does exist in Miami Beach. You just have the areas that are for tourists and the areas that are more resident centric.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I feel, and I'm gonna snitch on myself here a little bit. When I was in college, I feel like I was a part of the problem with spring break. Not gonna lie. I feel like I was a little bit of part of the problem. So, the development of the beach.
Yeah.
How have you seen it from when you started in office to where it is now? Like when you came in, obviously things weren't as they are now.
No.
So how did that develop, and how has your mindset changed since your first day in office to today?
Well, I'll say today Miami Beach is a much safer city than what it was 4 years ago. And that for me is something that I'm very proud of, just to be able to mitigate an issue like spring break. The tourists are still able to come to our city, but parents don't need to be scared about their kids making it back home, but in a coffin. That was the challenge we were facing. Criminal activity taking over our streets, stampedes, shootings, stabbings, employees not feeling safe showing up to work on Ocean Drive. Like, that was the real challenges that spring break was bringing to our city.
Yeah.
And who were the victims of it?
The businesses.
The businesses and the visitors who were coming here. The true spring breaker that was on spring break from college that was coming to visit Miami Beach, and their vacations were being ruined by local people from our own community that were driving in.
Yeah.
To cause a commotion in Miami Beach, to be selling drugs, to be drinking out of the back of their cars, to be taking over the streets and defiant to law enforcement. And we've been able to turn that around. We've been able to put strict measures in place that still welcome the tourists and ensure that the tourist, the real spring breaker, is able to enjoy themselves without having party poopers, unfortunately.
That's the party poopers. It just takes one.
It just takes one. And that's what was happening. So like you would have one guy cause a shooting and create these stampedes.
And then the 3 blocks go down, the businesses suffer, your vacation gets ruined. And I remember being on the beach where we met at the press conference, and it was actually about the spring break. And I think it was very smart how you kind of control the parking, because it limits the access of personnel and you can really monitor it. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna be there, you're gonna be there, whether you park 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks.
So that I got to tell you, I got to tell you, years ago, I wanted to start with the increased parking rates. And it took years of convincing my colleagues. And one year I was finally able to, after 2023, after the last bad spring break that we had, right after that spring break.
At the end of the day, it's a deterrent.
Right after that spring break, the moment we had to declare that curfew, I went to the dais and I told my colleagues, okay, this is what we're doing for next year. I want us to propose increasing parking rates to $100.
That's crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Like if you told me to go to the beach, I had to pay $100, I'll be like,
It wasn't easy convincing my colleagues. And then we said, we're going to proactively endorse curfews for the next spring break, because that was the only way that we were able to control what was happening in our city, by telling these criminals. They were literally criminals coming into our city. They were coming into our city to park on the streets, to party out of their cars. Aprovechar. They weren't contributing to the economy. They weren't eating at our restaurants. They were coming here. They were drinking out of their cars, and they were creating chaos. And so they knew if parking was going to be $100, they weren't going to be able to park there and do that. And they knew that if we were going to be proactively endorsing a curfew, no one wants to go to a place if they're going to have to leave at midnight. And so that helped start to create this narrative where we were going to be shutting the door on spring break. And 2024, we were able to get it done. For the first time in a decade, we didn't have stampedes, shootings, we didn't have curfews. Why? Because we set the right narrative out there. The criminal people didn't want to come into our city because they didn't want to have to pay for that $100 parking. They were scared that if they were to come in, that they were going to be faced with that double towing fee of $500. So they were caught with illegal drugs coming into the city. And they knew that we had these checkpoints set up that if there was an arrest warrant out for them, that they would get caught as they were coming into the city. Like, we created the strictest measures ever to deter the criminal activity from entering our city.
And obviously, you know, you work in local municipal government, but because Miami Beach is so influential, you have a lot of help from the state. Can you talk a little bit about how it was like working with DeSantis and like, you know, like the state law enforcement too, because it is a team effort, not just the beach.
Well, we're so grateful that now, second year in a row, the state of Florida has proactively been working with Miami Beach. The governor has offered us his resources. But I remember 2023, after we had the stampedes and the shootings and we had to impose the curfew, I called Senator Ileana Garcia, our state senator in Miami Beach, and I told her we need help. And she connected us immediately with the public safety person in Governor DeSantis' office. The next weekend, we had 50 law enforcement from the state of Florida. Then the following session, she realized that there were street takeovers of cars, and she passed legislation prohibiting people from taking over our streets and creating these street parties. And she passed legislation creating these double towing fees on those individuals that were coming in and bringing in illegal drugs or under arrest warrants. And so it's been a true partnership with the state of Florida, with the resources that they send us, not only with state troopers, but with the laws that they've passed in order to help us control the environment and make sure that people aren't taking advantage of the real spring breakers. The real spring breakers were the victims of the chaos of the past. And now we have a safe environment for people to enjoy.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, like, Miami Beach isn't going anywhere. And you want to build that reputation that you can come here and have safe, clean fun. Because at the end of the day, if you come once, you're going to come again.
Bro,
like,
people are in our city. They are enjoying the beaches. There are plenty of people walking our streets. What we don't have are criminals in our city. That is the only difference now. People are still coming to Miami Beach. They're eating in the restaurants. In fact, the people who are coming to eat in our restaurants, people are happy. They're leaving better tips.
I tell them.
It's crazy. Like, the businesses are actually happy that there are people who are actually tipping their employees more, and there are people who are enjoying the beaches. But what we don't have is people selling drugs. We don't have people coming in with weapons. We don't have people creating stampedes. And so what we've eliminated are the criminals who were destroying our city's brand around the world. Because what was happening is, not only did we have to shut down the party, but then the moment these stampedes happened and these shootings happened and these deaths happened, it would circle the tabloids around the world.
Of course.
And the damage to the brand of the city was so bad that it was not only affecting spring break, but it would affect Art Basel. It would affect
just overall, like, Miami Beach, I can't go no more.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just can't go no more. I'll go somewhere else.
That's what was happening. And so now we've been able to restore our brand as a family-friendly destination, not only as a party destination, but as a health and wellness destination. Our beach walk is the busiest it ever is. And that's 7 miles of continuous beach walks that people get to come, and now they get to ride their bicycles and run and enjoy yoga. Muscle Beach is the busiest it's ever been. Like, now we're talking about actually having to expand Muscle Beach because we have people coming not only to party, but to stay fit, to enjoy the outdoors, to watch the sunrise, to exercise on our beach walk, to enjoy the sunset. That's the beauty of what our city has to offer. And people are enjoying all the best things that it has to offer. And in my opinion, the best the Miami Beach has to offer, it's not just its nightclubs and its restaurant scene and all that. It's the natural beauty of a city. A
Yeah.
city on the coast with beautiful parks where people can do yoga on the beach and go to Muscle Beach and get fit and just enjoy that wellness.
It's a very
culture.
unique experience.
It
You're not going to
totally
find that in
is.
other parts of Florida.
Totally
Or the
is.
United States for that matter.
No, it really sets us apart from every other coastal destination because then on top of that, you have cultural tourism that comes to,
Yeah.
to Miami
You have a lot
Beach.
of-
And that's a whole different thing altogether with the largest collection of Art Deco buildings that tourists come from all around the world to experience in our city.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked to us about where Miami Beach was from, but now what would you say is like the future for the beach? Is it modernizing it? Is it preserving that cultural heritage that brings people? Where do you see the beach, 10, 20 years from now?
So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of resiliency. And we finally, after years of debating projects having to do with racing roads and installing new pumps and upgrading aging infrastructure, we've finally been able to get the commission behind important projects to raise south of Fifth, to raise West
By
Avenue.
raise, you literally mean like
raising
lift.
the roads. Raising
Okay.
the roads to face the challenges of sea level rise.
So if you raise the roads, don't you have to raise everything else?
If you raise the roads, you have to work with the private property owners to harmonize and make sure that sidewalks are able to harmonize to the proper level for buildings. But unless we do this,
That sounds expensive.
it is very.
That
it's-
just sounds expensive.
it's
You're like, we're going to
hundreds-
take the road and we're just going to bring it up.
It's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
But if we don't do this, we won't be resilient to the reality of sea level rise
And hurricanes.
and hurricanes. And not just that, sunny day flooding. We have areas in our city without.
It just rains and it floods.
No, forget about raining. We have areas of our city that without a drop of rain falling because of high tide, it just comes up from the ground.
Oh, okay.
We have neighborhoods where you go walk on the grass during high tide
And it's wet.
and it's wet because we live on a lime rock and that lime rock is a sponge. It's not like New York. New York is built on granite. We're built on a sponge, a rock that's a sponge, and the water rises right below it. And so unless we raise our roads and put in the proper infrastructure, these properties won't stand the test of time. They won't get insurance. And worst
Right, and
off,
insurance in Florida is already ridiculous.
well, and worst off,
Yeah.
our bond rating as a city, the credit agencies,
Goes down as a result.
it would go down. And so these are important projects that we need to make, not just from the financial perspective, but we really want to continue enjoying the
Yeah.
city.
It's not sexy, but it's necessary.
It's 100% necessary. So this city commission is finally moving forward. I was proud to be a champion of those projects.
Yeah.
My committee, the committee that I chair, is the Land Use and Sustainability Committee. It's a nerdy committee, but we advance important issues having to do with zoning and resiliency, and we were tasked with advancing key projects. We were finally able to get consensus, the entire city commission behind advancing.
They agree, like,
these
yeah, we
projects.
gotta do this.
We can't keep on kicking the can down the road. But that also means being resilient means not only facing the challenges of infrastructure, but resiliency also means that our residents who are on fixed incomes are able to continue to afford to live in Miami Beach. And we're working on very progressive, I believe, housing legislation to, for example, look at Washington Avenue and see how can we increase the housing availability there to not only support the businesses who are struggling there and create an ecosystem and economy that supports them year round outside of tourism season, but also create the housing that's needed
Like
for the
workforce
end
housing?
use. Forget about workforce housing, even the forgotten middle.
Okay.
There are people who are making more than the $80,000 threshold that is kind of like the maximum, the cap for workforce housing, who can't afford to live in our city. We have teachers, we have nurses, we have first responders.
That work in the city but can't live in the city.
They can't. This is why traffic is so bad in our city.
I see what you're saying.
Between 3 and 7 p.m. Why?
Because everybody goes out, they go to the mainland because that's where they live, but they work in the city.
They work in the city. They
Right.
can't afford the housing that's being developed in the city. And they can't afford that housing because that zoning has been shaped by developers, lobbyists who are looking to maximize profits.
Yeah.
And so what they've done is over the years, they've created a zoning code that prioritizes the interests of developers who are looking to create luxury housing because that's what gives them the most profit.
Yeah.
But we haven't looked at the needs of our end users, of the workforce of our city. So I have this survey that we're teaming up with a university to create a Live Better policy. And what is this Live Better policy? It's going out to the workforce and even residents who are being priced out of our city and see what type of housing do you need? Do you need rental or do you want to own? How much can you afford? How many rooms do you need in an apartment in order to be able to move your family to Miami Beach? Because we can create all the housing we want,
But if it's not fit for that person, because claro, no lo mismo saying, oh, here's a condo, a 1-1. This is like for a bachelor. This is for like somebody's summer home.
Exactly.
But that's not going to fit my family of 3.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I get
And
what
so
you're saying.
and so we're developing housing, but it's at the housing that
For
our
the
workforce
people.
needs.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And so we're teaming up with a university that's going to go out, survey the workforce that works in Miami Beach, that doesn't live in Miami Beach, and ask them, what is it that you need in order to live in our city? How much can you afford? And do you want to rent or do you want to own? So that then with that background of information, we can now create the zoning policy that serves that end user instead of constantly just prioritizing luxury housing, which
Luxury
is
condo.
the only thing that has been built in Miami Beach in the past 20 years.
And that kind of goes back to the earlier conversation we were having of how do you balance the tourism and this, like, you know, what Miami Beach is known for, the luxury, the bougie, versus like the local community. Like, how do you balance it?
Well, and if you think about it, Miami Beach depends on that workforce. As I was telling you, like about half of our $1 billion budget comes from tourist revenues. But the people who support that economy don't live in Miami Beach. And so we are codependent of each other. We need our workforce to succeed if our residents don't want to see their taxes going up, because the bulk of our budget comes from the money that our tourists spend in Miami Beach.
Yeah. No, I get you completely, because it's like, and it's funny because I had my tia, she lived on, is it Sheridan? I believe.
Yeah.
Sheridan, right? And she lived in one of those apartamentos. I don't know if she's still there, but this was years ago. And as I would go visit her, it would just always change. Like people were always moving in and out, and it stopped being families. It really seemed more Airbnb, more like rentals, and just like people that would buy the condos but wouldn't live there.
That's the crux of our affordability challenges in Miami Beach and frankly around the country, and I would say even the world, because you even go to Venice. I remember when I was in Venice, you know, and I was speaking with locals there, and they were like, we can't afford to live in Venice anymore. Why? Because
you get bought out.
They got bought out. Yeah, by Airbnbs. And that's what's happening in Miami Beach. People buy apartments, they convert them to Airbnbs, and so our longtime residents are being displaced with Airbnbs that pay more to the property owner. Yeah. And we need to fix that.
What other concerns are there? Is it more like, I guess my question, what I want to ask is like, is the issue more like the sea level rise, the global warming, or is it just that the position of geographically where the beach is makes it vulnerable, regardless of the sea level rise or not?
Well, I mean, we are a barrier island, and we were built on swamplands in Miami Beach. Mm-hmm. So it is a product of being a barrier island, but it's also the fact that seas are rising. And we know that to be true. And the science tells us unless we raise these roads and we install injection wells and we install cisterns under parks, we won't be able to stay dry when we have high tide, when we have the full moons in the fall. We know there's periods in the year when certain neighborhoods are completely flooded, and so unless we do this, those neighborhoods, the flooding will only get worse.
Yeah.
And when we have the storms, properties will only be further endangered. And that's the challenge that we face, that unless we do this, we know that the threat to private property is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And the amount of days that homes will be flooded will be longer and longer. And that's why this is a challenging investment, because it comes to interrupt people's qualities of life when they have to deal with construction. And when they have to deal with the dust that comes with construction, with the noise that comes with construction.
Or just even getting into your house.
Or just even getting into your house. But at the end of the day,
it's necessary.
It's an important investment to make sure that you're able to continue getting insurance on your property, to make sure that one day someone is willing to buy your property, to make sure that the city's finances stay strong. Otherwise, our credit ratings go down.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff that no one likes to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's a reality we face. And so, it's not just resilience physically, it's also the resilience of affordability. And that's one of the challenges that we face.
Yep.
And also condo owners who are facing the challenges of
the assessments. Oof, right.
The assessments and the insurances of their property. And that's one of the other things that I'm tackling, which is these predatory developers who are coming in, getting an entire building under contract. And then they take over a majority of the building, they start raising the fees, and now they have you trapped, where you either lower your sale price, or you're just trapped there paying the higher fees. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the things I'm trying to address on the City Commission. How do we address the challenge of predatory developers who are going after little viejitos who don't make a lot of money and taking advantage of their vulnerability in their incomes?
Yeah, honestly, with the whole condo stuff, I know that in Florida that's just become like the issue because of the assessments, and then after the Surfside stuff, everybody's like really harping in on these condos. So I'll be honest, I don't know much about it, but I know que la gente está vuelta para eso.
Yeah, it's not a good situation that people are facing, and then all of a sudden a developer shows up and gives you this beautiful contract. You don't want to say no to it because the number on it is very appealing to you.
Like to sell to the developer?
To sell to the developer. But then once they have you under contract, it's a very developer-friendly contract. Mm. And then
where they can get away with whatever.
And then the moment they raise your fees,
you can't do anything.
You can't do anything because they're going to come back to you and they're going to tell you,
you want to sell it for less?
You have to sell it for less.
So I get what you're saying. Like they basically put you in this box you can't get out, and like you're at their whim. Like,
and then what are you going to do? And then what are you going to do? Now you're paying more maintenance. They want to lower your price, and if you go out to the marketplace to sell in the marketplace, who is going to want your condominium with those high assessments? And so you're trapped. You're trapped in between a rock and a hard place where you need to sell, but you don't want to sell because now your buyer is the developer who's lowered you to this incredibly low price, and you're forced to give up your nest egg, your investment. And so I'm bringing forward legislation to hopefully address this.
And they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
Wise.
Because they have the time. They have the time, whereas you get put in this corner and it's like, oh, you got to make a decision.
That's right. And so we're bringing forward legislation that I'm sponsoring to go after these predatory developers. I want to hit them with more than just fees, where if I find that they are guilty of going after my residents, my vulnerable residents, through these predatory practices, I'm trying to put a moratorium on them being able to get building permits and putting in development applications, because that's where it hurts. That's where
it
hurts.
It's all about time.
The violation, that's a slap on the hand for them. But having to hold the property and not being able to do anything with them, that's where we get these developers. And I'm moving forward that legislation. I'm working with my attorneys. They're guiding me as to whether I'm going to be able to take it to the finish line or not. So I'm working really hard with my attorneys.
I just feel like you're going to have a challenge.
You always have a challenge, but unless we push the envelope, we'll never make progress. Yeah. And we need to protect the property rights of people. Florida is one of the most property right-driven states in the nation, but we need to protect the property rights, not of the rich people. Yeah, their rights need to be protected, but how about the rights of the everyday person? Yeah. De la viejita that's struggling, of the family that's struggling to make ends meet, of the person that made an investment thinking that this was going to be their nest egg, and now they're losing it. They're losing it to assessments and to insurance fees that they just can't afford, and all these reserves. And we need to protect their property rights. So property rights aren't just for the rich and the wealthy and the billionaires. Property rights are for those who may have done a $100,000 investment in 1986, and now they're about to lose it because some developer is taking advantage of it just to be able to buy out a building and make a new tower. Those people need to be protected as well. Their property rights matter too.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I totally see that. Like you made a point earlier about how all the development in Miami Beach now is these high luxury, like tower condos, and it's priced out for the local community. So you're not marketing this to local Miamians. They're marketing this to Brazilians, to Europeans, to the Saudis. Like
second, third, these are second or third homes for people who are not living here full time. And so just imagine now, where you had an apartment building of full-time residents
that was contributing, buying groceries here, paying taxes here.
They used to go to the movie theater. Now the movie theater is closing down. They used to go to the salon. The salon now closes down because you don't have the year-round activity of people here. So then what happens? These luxury units, they're people from Europe or from Canada, second, third, fourth homes for some of these really wealthy in between people. Yeah. And not even then. Some aren't even Airbnb. So like if someone shows up, they'll live there for a month, but you can't sustain the economy of a city
for 1 month
with someone that is living here for 1 or 2 months. And so we need to go back and see, okay, that's great. It's great that we have those buildings because they do contribute property taxes. But we need to preserve the fabric of our community.
Right.
We need the place where the nurse can live, where the secretary
has to be a balance. It can't be just all this or
where the concierge at the Fontainebleau can find an apartment to live in our city and contribute to our city year round, where families can afford to live. And that's what we don't have now. And to the contrary, they're being pushed out. And not only that, if you can afford an apartment in Miami Beach, you're also saying, well, I can afford an apartment in Midtown or Brickell because I'll get a gym and I'll have a business center and I'll have a spa.
Right, because at that price point, you could probably live in Brickell too. You could probably go here.
And you get better amenities. And so I want to make sure that we not only have housing that people can afford to live in, but housing that they want to live in, which is why it's so important to understand that end user and what they need in order to convince them to come back to live in Miami Beach. Because it's not just providing them with housing that they can afford, it's providing them housing that they can afford that fits their needs, the needs of their life and their family.
And the developers don't have the same end user that you're worried about.
They don't. They're concerned about the guy that has a place in New York and in LA, and this is their escape for a few months out of the year. That billionaire, it's not the person who I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the person, who's working at the Fontainebleau, who's working at Mount Sinai, who's working at Miami Beach Senior High, who's having to be stuck in traffic for 2 hours
just to get to work.
Just to get to work.
Or out of the island.
And that's just not feasible, because if you even think about their output, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same if you get to walk to work and get to work in a 15-minute walk as to having to be sitting in traffic for over an hour. Your quality of life is going to be different. What you're going to contribute to your employer is going to be different. And your participation in the city is not going to be the same.
Excuse me.
And so that's the type of housing I'm looking to develop. And so, for example, on Lincoln Road, we're bringing forward legislation where we're going to increase heights in a certain section of Lincoln Road
to build up,
to be able to build up, and requiring these developers to also preserve the buildings that exist there today, but allow them to build floors above it to create that housing that can sustain
the people that also work there.
That sustain the people that work there, but also support the businesses that are there.
Yeah, I want to shift a little bit into your mindset, the reason you make the decisions. I can imagine that you've had difficult conversations, both with yourself and with other people. So, do you have an internal dialogue with yourself? Like, do you have a routine when you wake up? Do you meditate? Do you journal? Like, what do you do to keep sane and keep yourself composed?
One of my favorite things, and this is the greatness of living in Miami Beach, that I get to wake up in the morning and I get to walk to the beach walk, and I'm able to see the sunrise over Miami Beach. And It's just great because there's just so much positive energy that comes with that. It just kind of like it resets me. It gets me ready for the day. It gets me at peace. And I just always ask God to make me an instrument of his peace. Literally, like, there's a prayer of St. Francis, make me an instrument of your peace. And that's really what I strive for is, for there to be peace, to be unity, for me to be able to be an agent of that. I try to be very optimistic, and I just want to do good, and good comes in many ways. And I have the privilege of serving in elected office. It is a privilege that I don't take lightly. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to the community that has placed their trust in me. And I just want to govern ethically, govern honorably, that people be proud of me being their elected official, that they know that I always have an open door policy. I mean, there's not a person that reaches out to my office that asks for an appointment that we don't grant them the appointment. Like, I listen to everyone. And out of that, I just, seek to do good. How can we find common ground to advance the best interests of the city and its residents so that they have a future in this city, so they're not priced out by increasing water and sewer rates, so they're not priced out by high rents, so that they're not priced out by greedy developers, so that if you apply to live in a condo, you don't have to wait months before you get an approval. That's one of the things I'm working on, actually, a fair approval process.
Porque it's too...
Oye, se demoran. You can't apply for a condo, to live in a condo or to live in an apartment building, and have to wait over a month. Especially when
by that, you'll find somewhere else.
What's that?
By that point, you'll find somewhere else.
But the thing is, now they have your money. When you apply to live somewhere, you gotta pay so much money in application
fee,
fees,
the credit checks, all the stuff.
Yes, it costs a lot of money to apply to live somewhere. And now they have that money. And now they have you stuck. And so I'm working on a fair approval process that gives people a speedier response, so that if you don't get a response within 15 days, they need to give you your money back so that you can go apply somewhere else. Those are the things that, that motivate me to continue doing good in our city. And it's not just for our residents, for our businesses too. Bureaucracy and the red tape slows things down for businesses. And so, you have commercial corridors with high vacancy rates. And so we're creating these pop-up permits that people can get a pop-up permit to operate and do business in our city for up to a year without having to go through the red tape of government. And not only that, we're trying to give them commercial lease subsidies so that they're replacing, the adult bookstore that was there for 20 years, or they're replacing the liquor store that's been there for 20 years to bring in something that supports the economy in a better way. We'll give you subsidies to help you come in, open your business, and thrive in our city. And it's not just about creating a healthy environment for tenants and residents, and not just a healthy environment for our businesses, but it's also creating a healthy environment for the environment itself.
That's back to that resilience.
Talking about the resilience, making sure that we're not only investing in our infrastructure, but that we're also investing in our waterways. One of the things I'm most proud about is an operation that we just launched that I've sponsored and created, is Operation Clean Water. We have our Parkview Canal in the north end of our city. For 5 years, residents have not been able to touch the water in that canal because of the high levels of this very fancy thing called enterococcide.
Is that like red tide, green tide?
Enterococcide is human fecal matter.
Oh, nice.
Yes. It's
Poopy water.
Poopy
water.
It's a fancy word for it. Enterococcide. I feel so sophisticated whenever I get to say it.
For poopy water. Okay.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So who knew this? The healthy level for it is 70 MPNs.
Right.
Don't ask me what an MPN is.
Okay.
But the levels of it was at 1,500. Imagine 1,500.
Exponentially more. A lot of poopy.
It's supposed to be at 70. It was at 1,500. What did we do? Year after year, I started investing in relining the sewer infrastructure in the north end of our city. And over the past few years, I'm very proud that we've been able to take it from 1,500 to under 100 MPNs in just a short few years that I've been in office. And now we're in the final stretch of it.
Of getting it back to where it needs to be.
Of getting it back to where it needs to be. So we're working with the school board because we saw that by Biscayne Beach Elementary, there's a high elevated of fecal matter that's coming out of the outfalls there. But we don't have jurisdiction or control over the pipes coming out of the school. So we're working with the schools now to restore those lines. We're looking at our catch basins and installing filters in our catch basins in the drains so that all the trash that makes it, we can capture that. It's like a colador. Pretty much, you know, like the colador your abuela would use to drain the pasta is the same thing. We put a colador literally in the drain so that you catch all that trash before it makes it into the water. And we're doubling the amount of sanitation cleaning that we're doing on the streets to clean all of that up before it makes it on the water. And I'm hopeful that over the next 6 months, Operation Clean Water will restore a healthy water quality to our Parkview Canal, and people can finally go back out there with their kayaks and go back swimming in that water. And that'll be one of the proudest
I would not
things.
want a kayak in poopy water.
No, of course not. But the moment we're done with this, I'm hopeful that once comes back in there and does the new study, they'll hopefully will be able to give people a restored water quality that they deserve.
Commissioner, was there ever a moment, or was it like a series of events that happened in your life where you're like, I'm gonna run for office? Was it like one instant, or was it something that kind of like extended through where it's like, okay, no, I have to do this?
You know, well, so I've had great people influence me, great public servants, you know, whether it be Matti Bower, the first Hispanic mayor of Miami Beach, or people like Rebeca Sosa, who I worked with for many years, you know, very strong leaders who believed in serving the people. And they were a big influence in my life. But what really drew me to run for office was a shooting that happened in August of 2021, I'm sorry, in August of 2021, where a dad lost his life because of a drugged visitor that was walking on Ocean Drive, pulled out his gun and just shot this man right in front of his family.
Oh my God.
And that's when I knew, okay, safety is an issue in our city. We need to turn this ship around. And I ran for office, and we've passed very strict policies having to do with spring break, having to do with recurring offenders. We have a municipal prosecution program where, you know, repeat offenders who get arrested, we have our own prosecutor in Miami Beach who appears in court and advocates for the proper sentencing so that we restore the justice that our community deserves, making sure that our police officers have something, a basic tool like the real-time crime center that we just unveiled, where they have access to over 850 cameras that have over 1,500 feeds throughout our city, where they can see the activity that is happening in our city and capture crime before it even happens. And it's something that I was proud to advance as a commissioner, that when I ran for office, I ran for office with a promise of making public safety a top priority. And we were investing in all of these cameras, but the police weren't seeing the feeds coming from these cameras. And I made it a point to advance that real-time crime center. It's operational today. It's fully staffed. It has the latest technology. It's not only using cameras, it's even using drones that can be deployed.
Because they need tools to actually police. And I can imagine in spring break where it's like everything's happening so fast and everything's so quick, like that line of communication is vital.
Technology is a force multiplier for our police officers. So whether it's cameras installed throughout the city or license plate readers to catch those individuals with open arrest warrants before they make it into our city, or whether it be drones that can be deployed to the scene of an incident in under a minute so that police know what is happening there before they even show up. We are leveraging technology as the force multiplier that is helping our police officers restore the safety of our cities. Part of the reason why we have such a successful spring break as it relates relates to public safety.
Yeah. And I want to end on some advice that you can give to younger people. Maybe not necessarily people who want to run for office, but people that just like to get involved, that want to see the world be a better place. What advice would you give them?
Follow your passion. If you are someone who is focused on business and economic development, find a way that you can contribute back to society with your interest in development. Or if it's the arts or if it's architecture, find your way that you can contribute back, but in the area that aligns with your passions. And if you look to serve in public office, this doesn't have to be a lifelong commitment. And I pray to God every day that I don't become one of these leaders that seeks to stay in public office forever. We all contribute, but we don't own the seats that we occupy in elected office. These are seats that belong to the community. And there's times for us to serve and make our contributions and move on. Because whether you are an elected official or whether you are just a resident doing great things in the community, we all can serve at any capacity. There's just this capacity that's elected office, but activists play an important role. People who are contributing through nonprofits play an important role. And the most important political office is the office of the residents. That is the most important political office. It's the voice of the residents, whether it be on social media or showing up at meetings or whether it be at the ballot box. Everyone can make a meaningful difference.
Oh yeah. Commissioner, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ahí estamos.
Dale. And this platform right here, you're making a difference with this platform.
I try. I say that this all really started because young people, when I interned my very first campaign with Ani Dede Flores in 26, that I say that and I'm like, oh my God, that's a long time. Yeah, that was my very first campaign, and it was abuelita politics. I'm like, I'm the youngest person here.
Yeah.
So I recruited my frat, I recruited all my people from high school, and that's kind of what started the Ven Vamos thing.
Yeah.
Because there was just no young people. So this aims to kind of bridge that personableness between politicians and actual people. Because I would tell people, I was like,
abuelita politics,
politics.
That's like the days of like Marta Flores, like the counterpart of this to back then.
Yeah.
Would have been like Marta Flores, and Radio Mambi, and WPBA. And now it's transformed into this.
Into this podcast kind of scene, and that's why I go live, and that's why I do these things. But what was I gonna say? Espérate. The last point I was gonna make was, that if your dad was the mayor, you would vote, you would campaign, you would participate. But because there's not that primacy in people's lives, like the only way you motivate somebody is if it affects them.
Yeah.
So like, for example, when we look at like the last election, the Amendment 4, Amendment 3, the marijuana, the abortion issue, that motivated a lot of people. It didn't win. Granted, we could get into the whole Florida 60% thing, which I think is crazy.
60% is
I think it's crazy. It's like, no, it won. It won. But
well, if you think about it,
yeah,
you're letting the minority make the decision for the
majority.
And that's the least democratic thing you could ever do. It's not that I necessarily agree with the marijuana issues.
Yeah.
Because like in Miami Beach, we've had such big struggles with the public consumption and the public sale of marijuana. So we've had our struggles with it. But I don't think it's right for the minority to decide for the majority. And I think in that case,
it won by 57%.
And that's
57 that's winning.
And that's where that's where elected officials play such an important role, because I might not necessarily agree with the issue, but I'm here to represent people. And if 57% of people agree with something, that just should be what prevails.
Yeah.
Not the 43% that didn't.
Exactly. But to my point is that those issues, one, because it affected people, like they felt the need to go out. So my whole goal with this has been, I want to put elected officials in the front of people's feeds, because the majority of my counterparts, they don't even know that there's jobs in politics. They just think it's the politician and their assistant.
Right.
That's literally it.
Right.
But they didn't know that, there's consultants, you could do this, you could do that. So that's my goal, to really bridge that, so that when they see your name, they're like, pero yo lo vi aquí.
Yeah.
So that's my goal.
Cool, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Hell yeah.